Hello, my name is Jay Vanston, and I am speaking for our group tonight on our first assignment in the curriculum in higher education. And the title of this presentation is Assignment 1, Digging Up Identities in Medical Education, Lessons from Archaeology. My partners are Catherine Beeling, Michelle Salvatore, as well as Amanda Severin. When working collaboratively on a high-level professional activity, participants assume specific roles, and this is true in almost any endeavor, from engineering to high-level education to medical education. Goodwin suggests that members of a profession code, highlight, and record information from the environment in a way that is understandable to all within the profession. This allows for an ease of transfer of information and ideas, and the way in which data is coded is passed on to students of the profession. Jacoby and Gonzalez bring up another interesting point that states that the expert-novice roles in instructional situations are not static, but instead are fluid. I think you see this best in medical education, where the attending physician is working with the medical student, residents, and fellows, as well as the patient to come up with a diagnosis and to establish a treatment plan. So in terms of the different roles, and again we're talking about the attending physician, the fellow or medical resident, the medical student, and the patient, that the attending historically is defined as the macro expert, but he takes on a micro-novice role at times when interacting with students. And in this case and in the following slides, when I talk about students, I'm talking about fellows, residents, as well as medical students. An example of this change in roles from the macro expert to a micro novice role might be a situation where an internal medicine attending is taking care of a patient who has HIV disease, and he happens to have a student on his service who did extensive research in HIV before and is on the cutting edge of HIV treatment. In this situation, the student takes on, for a short period of time, the real expert in terms of the diagnosis and management of that patient. And in the training of the attending, his goal is actually ultimately for the student to push out the expert, that they can become independent and function on their own. The attending also teaches the students the coding schemes or language and how to highlight data in the environment, how to determine, for example, in a patient with congestive heart failure, there are ways to think about how that, what is important in the history, the physical exam, as well as the laboratory studies, and what point to that particular diagnosis. The attending also relies on students to provide information for the creation of the artifact. This is the diagnosis and treatment plan. And he educates patients as well by coding and highlighting their experiences. And in this situation, it's signs and symptoms while rendering a diagnosis. The fellow or resident has probably one of the more difficult roles in the team. In the hierarchy, he is both the teaching and student role, and therefore needs to be the most flexible in quickly moving between these roles. And if you follow a resident or a fellow during the day, he moves many times between being the teacher of those below him in terms of training and being the student of the attending physicians. He is a quasi-macro expert who also serves as a novice. And as Alexander describes, he would be considered competent. He's the one, to kind of push our metaphor a little bit, is to makes the discovery at the dig. He's the one who determines what the patient's signs and symptoms are and provides coded and highlighted data to the attending physician for creation of the artifacts or the diagnosis and treatment plan. He also educates medical students in the coding and highlighting of medical data as well. The medical student is actually the true novice. He can be a micro expert depending on prior experience, as mentioned earlier, and this was the example of the medical student who happened to have significant expertise in HIV. And he is described by Alexander. They start in the acclimation phase and move to competence by the end of medical school. They are often quite enthusiastic at the dig site, but they need extensive help in coding schemes, highlighting data, and creating the diagnosis and treatment plan for the patient. And just to tease them a little bit, they perform a lot of digging, but oftentimes not a lot of coding, at least early in their years. In keeping with patient-centered care, the patient really is the treasure at the dig site. He or she is the one who has signs and symptoms being coded and highlighted by the various medical professionals, attendings, resident fellows, and medical students. But they also bring expertise about themselves. They are really the ones who know their history. They know what their symptoms are and how quickly they came on, and they are the ones who know how they're going to react to the diagnosis and the treatment. And they learn about their disorder as a novice without the intention of becoming a part of the profession. So in summary, when caring for patients, it's important to understand that unlike prior models of learning and education where the attending or the professor passed information in a unidirectional way to the students, that really in the care of patients that the attending physician and the medical student, resident and fellow, and patient really are interacting all of the time, and that at any point in time any one of those individuals can become the expert and any one of those individuals can become the student. And at the end, if the team works together, that oftentimes the diagnosis and the management will become accurate and for the better good of the patient. Finally, we just wanted to end with a quote from Stephen Dean, and we did add the term medicine into the quote, but really it fits. He said, "Archaeology or medicine is like a jigsaw puzzle, except you can't cheat and look at the box and not all the pieces are there." And this was by Stephen Dean.